During the Second World War, the Japanese Imperial Army invaded New Guinea and captured the village of Kokoda on 28th of July 1942. This gave Australians the greatest sense of immediacy about the need for a reliable defence force. Today, the infamous Battle of the Kokoda Trail is embedded in history, an epic battle of blood and death, mud and hunger, and stirring courage. It developed into the most direct threat by any aggressor Australia herself was ever to face. The Japanese succeeded in advancing as far as Iuraba Ridge, from which units of the 21st Brigade, namely the 39th, 2nd 14th and 2nd 16th Battalions, drove them back over the mountains to the coast of Buna. A number of servicemen in these campaigns were Scots College Old Boys. In 1967, Major John Moore, a senior master of the college and officer in charge of the cadet unit, undertook a visit to Papua New Guinea and formulated a plan to take a group of school cadets across the Kokoda Trail. Thanks to his connections and rank as a major of the citizens' military forces, the first trek of 29 cadets and 2 masters took place in May 1969. In 1972, Major Moore led a second expedition and cemented a long-standing Scots tradition of regular Kokoda Trail crossings. All but one of the 8 expeditions traversed the track from Kokoda to Owen's Corner. This was Major Moore's 1972 group. The Kokoda track is one of the world's greatest walks. The 96 kilometres cuts across knife-edge ridges and over teasing mountains, through rainforest, jungles of ferns, orchids and towering trees entwined with creepers. Clean mountain streams bridged by vine-lashed logs tumble into steep valleys. Unspoiled villages and their local inhabitants with friendly smiles and gifts of fruit greet us on our journey. The mountains of Papua New Guinea are steep, soil-covered ranges, generally forming the spine of the country in an east-west direction. With the continual wet weather, any trails that are heavily used become boggy and impassable. However, compared to the hardships faced by the diggers, our crossings indeed were much more tolerable. Many who have walked the trail will recall the names of the villages along the route. Names like Isurava, Alolo, Kagi, Manari and Naoro. Some will remember where particular events occurred, a purchase of fruit, an overnight stay or an airlift following an injury. The route is a seemingly never-ending series of tortuous climbs and slippery, harrowing descents. Many dangerous creeks could only be crossed by log bridges, all of dubious construction. With such skill and care necessary to avoid an accident, certainly a great deal more than that required to cross the quadrangle on the way to a Monday morning assembly. When climbing the long hills, there are false summits which frustrate the impatient. Fortunately, the villages provide regular points at which to rest, make new acquaintances, establish progress, and perhaps even attempt to make contact by radio with the base at Goldie River. At these times, the leader will address the team on various issues. He will explain some geography that lies ahead or some of the local customs. The wounded will be attended to and the group will be able to relate their experiences of the day, boosting morale. A sense of unity and comradeship is fostered and the party will be able to prepare themselves physically and mentally for the next day's walk. At many of the famous battlegrounds, Imita Ridge, Templeton's Crossing, Iurabawia, it is exciting to find the trenches and gun pits amongst the bushes. The fortunate find decomposing artefacts, helmets, firearms, ordnance, or maybe the odd airplane. All they have to do is carry these out. The 1989 expedition saw a concerted effort by members to locate new supplies of World War II artefacts, and certainly they succeeded. With the aid of a metal detector, they located hand grenades, bullets and casings, rifle barrels and mortars. With a little imagination, one immediately becomes thankful that there is not also the added difficulty of a battle to fight within this oppressive terrain. The Japanese were masters of camouflage, posting their snipers in treetops and sacrificing themselves ruthlessly. Without the local help, it is unlikely that the Allied effort could have proceeded as well as it did. It is in this context that the strongest ties were forged between the diggers and the Nationals, who were formerly referred to as the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels. It took the devotion of many of them as stretcher bearers and guides to reach medical aid and find the safest routes through the densely covered jungle. On the trail, it was a lifestyle vastly removed from the orderly, comfortable lives we normally lead at home. The weather during the wet seasons is typical of equatorial rainforests, raining daily. But during the dry season, when our expeditions have occurred, we have been fortunate to have some respite from this. In 1982, it is noted, no rain at all is recorded to have fallen during the entire crossing of 5 days. During the day, the sun can beat down fiercely and the humidity takes its toll, something one never gets used to, even after spending several weeks in the region. It makes sense to take frequent rest stops and approach each section of the route with a sense of strategy, without pushing oneself too hard. The devotion and attitude of service by the PNG Defence Force continues in the relationships between the Scots College and PNG. Each expedition has been most fortunate to be accompanied by servicemen of the PNG Defence Force. They became part of the camaraderie and helped us share the load. In 1972, Gary Swanton fell into Aurora Creek and nearly drowned, but for the immediate and desperate efforts of Sergeant Bumara, our guide. The 1978 expedition also saw the service of the Nationals, where a runner was instrumental in taking a message to divert a plane from a Fogi airfield to Kagi to transport an injured member of the party. Their assistance has always been invaluable in bartering for food in the villages with their local knowledge and command of pidgin. When unable to stay in a village, you rely on your own skills in erecting hoochie villages, but be careful with fires. The hoochie material is very flammable. Who would have thought such a dive could feel so much like home? In such an environment, the food that one carries is also necessarily as light as possible, yielding sustenance for the day. Cooking facilities must be carried for camping in the bush. The purposes of these expeditions are many, and they become clearer as the cadets progress along their way. Certainly, they have developed respect for the Second World War effort on the Kokoda and the sacrifice by those diggers involved. They will also have appreciated the high level of dedication and preparedness required from them to make their own journey across the trail. A strong respect is also gained for the villages and people that the members of the expedition have met on their way. Friendships will be formed, furthering the aims of developing cooperative ties between our two nations. A sense of comradeship will have been instilled in them, as well as support for other members of the team. They will have a stronger self-reliance, reinforcing the words of several reporters in the Scotsman who have realised the value of such an undertaking. On this basis, then, many future such expeditions can be expected. The visit to the old battlefields of the Kokoda Trail will be a culmination of several years of cadet training and a chance to practice leadership and teamwork under conditions of possible discomfort. At the end of their trek, each member of the expedition can relate the value of having voluntarily experienced a week or so in hot, wet and humid conditions, out of contact with our own civilization and comforts as we know them. Remember, the diggers had no choice. None of us forgets the feeling of awe experienced at Bumana War Cemetery due to the vast number of Allied servicemen buried there, including the grave of Flight Lieutenant Philip Mullins. The tragic story of Philip Mullins' death during service as an airman in the New Guinea campaign and the fitting remembrance over the college gates of such sacrifice leaves us with good reason to be proud of our heritage. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his success and dedication to the war effort. There are some 3,500 tombstones in this graveyard. The monuments to so many nameless soldiers and stretcher bearers here and at McDonald's Corner are important reminders of the debt we owe to our forefathers. After walking the Kokoda Trail, expedition members are awarded a tremendous sense of achievement and can well understand why it is recognised as one of the world's greatest treks. Closer ties with our neighbours of Papua New Guinea are formed, ensuring the success of future college Kokoda Trail crossings, a tradition now truly embedded as a result of John Moore's efforts some 23 years ago.